Welcome, good morning. I'm Kate Bulkley. I'm an independent journalist based in the UK, and we're going to do three rapid-fire, behind-the-scenes, talk to the key players interview sessions, which I think will be fun. The idea is that because the business models are changing so rapidly, because distribution is changing, this is all impacting content creation. It's impacting how we promote and market shows. It's impacting how we monetize shows, how we distribute shows. Lots of stuff is changing. And so we decided it would be good to get the view from from players in sort of three parts of the value chain, or the food chain, so to speak. So we have three interviews in a row. We're going to start with Lionsgate. There's Jim next to me, and I'll introduce him in a second. Then we have Dee Forbes, who is the head of Discovery Networks Western Europe, obviously a big channel player. And then we have Evan Shapiro. He runs a new network in the US called Pivot, which you may or may not have heard of. You will hear of it by the end of this. It's a very interesting network, so we'll hear from him and how he's thinking about the world. Jim, let's start with you. So Jim is president of worldwide television and digital distribution for Lionsgate. We're all familiar, I think, with Lionsgate. It's a leading producer and distributor of film and primetime cable and broadcast television, including standout shows like Weeds, one of my favorites, Nashville, Anger Management, oh, don't we love Charlie Sheen, Mad Men, and the much talked about Orange is the New Black for Netflix, which I think we'll hear a little bit more about. He obviously also is involved with lots of films. Mud was my most recent favorite coming out of your studio. I like that. Jim is president of distribution. He oversees all forms of television distribution, channels, digital media networks. He's worked with, Apple, Hulu, Amazon, Netflix. So he has a view, I think, what I would say across the piece about what's going on. So Jim, talk us through this. I know you're gonna talk about film as a way to kind of set us up in terms of how distribution is changing. So give us a view of how your life has gotten more complicated and more interesting in the last few years.
Well, I think, one of the things that's amazing is I looked back about 7 years ago, and we would track about 4 or 5 different rights. And now with kind of this explosion of exclusive, non-exclusive, SVOD, all these different players that are in, I think we track like 12 rights now, maybe 13 rights. So that department's bigger. Yeah. So I can tell you that much. Because when you have 15,000 titles and 12 rights, it's combined with a lot of countries, it's a lot of work.
A lot of work, yeah.
I think the part that's kind of exciting for me, I mean, everybody talks a little bit about all this great TV content that's being created. I think if you walk around here, you'll see it, and you realize that TV content is exploding right now. But the other part of it is the distribution models are exploding, which is kind of fun for me. I mean, I kind of look at it as, when you have all this content and many new platforms kind of colliding, it provides real opportunity to take advantage of new windows, experiment, and I think when I show a couple slides on our feature film experimentation in the US, the experimentation, you get rapid results. Right. I love when you can, try something and either you are really successful or you fail quickly and you can learn.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's being provided right now. It's a great time.
So you're going to tell us about one of your failures, right?
Of course.
Oh, of
I
course
will.
Of course.
We've had a few.
Yeah. Now, do you want to do your slides now?
Yeah, I'll just do the slides. We don't have to do the tape. We'll just do the slides.
Whatever you want to do. You can do your sizzle reel, whatever you want to do.
So I'm just going to go through this quickly on the slides. We can get those up. And this is just a quick example that was literally a couple of weeks ago that shows how my team, which is really starting to get incredibly aggressive and creative on different types of windows, how it can actually play itself out on one of the bigger platforms out there, which is Apple. So the windows are changing. They're not all the same. We take each movie and really think about who's the audience, whether it's an ownership audience or a rental audience. I think when you take a look at this week, which is the typical Apple platform, what you don't see on the right is what kind of models actually make up those films that get on the platform. We had 7 films, we call them SKUs, 7 films in the top 20, and it was not an accident, partly due to the fact that each one of the films had a different window. It's actually the first time in my career that it was so different, and yet we had 7 in the top 20. These are the films. So you can see where they are, and that's the top 20. And I'm just going to go through quickly kind of each model and why it actually fit the film. First one was a big $120 million blockbuster. We came up with an extended edition with the director. We did not have any VOD, so the only way you could get this version was to buy it. And we did a very opportunistic 5-day early EST. So if you really wanted it over Labor Day, and Labor Day's been very successful for us at Lionsgate, people are home last weekend of the summer, they want to watch something, they don't want to wait, they'll buy. And that ended up being a very significant film for us. This is an interesting one because we have a direct-to-video, which normally does not get into the top 20. Direct-to-videos just usually don't get there. But we sold this like a feature film, and we did VOD early. So this was the same exact Tuesday that Now You See Me went out, but instead of doing early EST, we did VOD because we felt people would sample because of The Rock. And ultimately, that proved to be a big success because we've never had a DTV in the top 20. Mud, which you mentioned, this is kind of an interesting example of how we also have to switch our kind of decision making as we get into this. So Mud, we thought, could do 5 to 7 million at the box office. So we ultimately, or early on, thought it was going to be a VOD title. Matthew McConaughey, very well known, maybe a little bit of an art house movie, more of a rental title. Comes out of the gate, does much better than we thought. Actually did like $20 million, and we immediately switched to an ownership model and did it 2 weeks before DVD because we felt that when you start to get to the 10 to 15 to $20 million box office level, people are actually making a statement that they might own the title. And this has proven to be one of our best EST titles of the year. Traditional. Didn't do anything different on this than we would normally do all over the, over the last couple of years. DVD, VOD, and EST all same day. Why? Because it's big and broad. There's no need to do anything special. The film is actually one that will sell itself, and sometimes you don't have to overthink it. One of our best titles last year was Twilight Breaking Dawn 2. We didn't do anything special. We just did a traditional release, and it worked just fine. This was a day and date with theatrical. So these are some really unique things that we're starting to do, which I'm starting to feel pretty good about, which is a higher retail price for VOD, so it's a premium because it's in the theaters at the same time you can rent it. When you have a cast like this, for us, it really lends itself to that kind of modeling. And ultimately, the same thing, we went out on Friday. So we had 3 new titles on that Friday before Labor Day, and it ended up being very, very successful. Peoples, not sure it was an ownership title, good cast. We think it's accessible, so we put it out 2 weeks before DVD on VOD. So what we do is rather than try to sell it, people didn't go to the theater as much as we would have liked. We thought it was a really accessible comedy, so we did VOD early. And then the last one is EST with Now You See Me, which was not the special edition, but the traditional kind of movie that you saw in the theaters. And on this particular situation, we just did it with VOD 5 days later, and ended up being the right way to go. So ultimately, as you go down, you can see where they all follow. But if you look at the movies in between, they're all big theatricals. And yet we have all these specialty models in there. And I think, the part of this that is fun is the TV part, the television distribution for our series are starting to follow the same pattern in the sense that, my team that's here selling Orange is the New Black off of Netflix. We have a new show, Deadbeat, with Hulu. So we're starting to think about that. We have Houdini.
That's just in production.
Just in production. Yeah. Houdini, which we just had an event yesterday with A+E Studios.
Right. And that's in production too.
That's in production too.
I hear that Adrian Brody is hanging upside down in some water in
He
Prague.
wasn't here. Yeah,
right.
He's in Prague. He wasn't here. People keep thinking he was
Houdini.
here. He's playing Houdini. And then you have something typical like Nashville off of ABC, which is a big, broad, network show. So when we start to think through, how to sell these things, I even look at what AMC's doing with Mad Men, 7A and 7B. They did it with Breaking Bad. It was obviously very successful. Mm-hmm. And I have to, say to myself and say to my team, okay, we have 7A and 7B. They're splitting up the final season of Mad Men. Right. What's the right way to distribute that per country so you maximize? So,
and how big was the gap in between A and B? Was it
on
weeks?
Breaking Bad? No, Breaking Bad, it was
huge,
fairly significant. Yeah, so it was almost a year.
That's
I think.
complicated.
Yeah.
The one thing that hits me when the theatrical bit, you always got the theatrical. There's always that theatrical release. In TV, it's getting a little different because, yes, you might have a broadcaster who's broadcasting it like a Breaking Bad type show, but Netflix, it was all out there. Orange is the New Black was all out there all at once. It was a binge experience. So how do you actually figure out where you're going to distribute this stuff?
We kind of do it. First of all, you make a judgment call on each territory. So each territory we looked at differently. We have some territories where we could sell it as pay TV, and we did sell it as pay TV.
Yep.
We have some territories where we had to take a different approach. Like China was an interesting one where
This is Orange is the New Black.
yeah, this is Orange, just on Orange. So
Okay,
you can go to pay TV traditionally when Netflix puts them all up.
Yep.
But I was a little bit concerned about the piracy, and in China, all 13 up, I expected all 13 to be on the internet quickly.
Yeah.
And normally we hold back shows in China 6 months. And in this situation, I said, why are we, going to do that? Because it gives them 6 months to get the shows up. Why not just go? Because there's a fairly active market now there.
In VOD.
In VOD, we know I think it's like 7 Hulus.
Right.
Because there are.
Really?
They're very big, and they have capital, and they're buying titles,
Okay.
and they're buying shows. And ultimately, we went out and said next day, and we had a bidding war.
Wow.
And so we ended up, because I figured it was going to get pirated anyway.
No, you're right.
And let's do it legitimate.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the piracy went way down.
Good.
And we got a record price out of China. So, we have to kind of look at each market. And in some markets, we hold.
Yeah.
We just don't rush. Because, Netflix was very aggressive. One of the things that's changing is because Netflix puts all 13 up, they had to order season 2 quickly if they want to, satiate the audience. If you think about it, they don't get to roll it out over 6 months or 5 months like a network. They got to see all 13, so they could make a judgment call without having to wait week to week to week, like like ABC does in Nashville. But ultimately, that'll be good because we'll get this product quicker. And so
Well,
that'll
also
affect,
you get the order quicker to make the next series,
which is even
nice.
better. But if you're a broadcaster, one of the things you worry about internationally, whether you're pay or free or basic cable or whatever platform you're on, am I going to have a 1 season and out show? You don't have to worry about that with Orange.
Yeah, that's right. Because that they've already ordered a second series. That is really changing the whole production schedule for you, and it's changing how you think, I guess, about marketing and promotion, right?
Yeah, it does.
It seems to me there's some pitfalls that could happen there. If I think let's talk about Breaking Bad. It wasn't your show, but the idea that they had this, they really eked it out, right?
Yes.
Now, and that worked for them. There was some piracy and there was some, but the final episode got a huge audience. So the old models aren't dead? Is that safe to say?
No, I don't think they're dead at all. And I actually think, if you look at how Netflix marketed Orange and how they've marketed their stuff, they've done a very good job of making it very relevant and current, and they've done a great job with social media of keeping it alive. If you look at some of the things they're doing right now, between season 1 and season 2. And Nashville, from our perspective, I do still like getting awareness and getting information and promotion and marketing every single week as you go along, because I do think it takes a little bit of time to go around the globe on what's working and what's not. I think one of the big parts of our job now, and I think everybody's job as far as analyzing a hit, is really looking at the DVR. I look at our numbers on Nashville, and they come in some situations +3 and +7, like 40, 50, 60%. Up.
From the
so how
original
do you,
TX.
Yeah, and so you have to say to yourself, okay, so don't look at that first number. When you looked at +3, I think on Nashville, we beat CSI. And so I said to myself, okay, wait, hello, let's look, we beat CSI. That's a fairly, successful franchise.
So what do you think about, when that happens, what do you think? You think you can hold back VOD?
I think you hold back really going out and sharing where you think the show is as from a sales effort till you have more information. You got to wait. You can't rush out there right away. You got to wait to see all the info.
Yeah. What it seems to me that there's a lot of new money in the system because the Netflix and the Amazons and Hulus are all trying to establish themselves, and they're ordering these big shows like House of Cards, like Orange is the Next Black. On Hulu's, you're doing one with Hulu. There's also money because they're bidding up, for instance, the UK is a very competitive market between Amazon and Netflix, and they're bidding up prices for content. Is this a short-term window? Some producers of content have said to me, one of them's going to fall over in these markets. It's going to end up being a Netflix market, or this market will end up being an Amazon market. Do you worry about that as a distributor, that they're shooting their wad? No. Okay. They've got to keep that share price up.
I don't.
So you think they're going to continue to commission shows?
Yes. I'm not worried about it at all. I think, if anything, I'm looking for the local players to get more active. I think that's what you're going to start to see. They'll start doing their own SVOD services, and they'll do their own add-on services, and they're not going to lay down and let a service come in from over the top and not fight.
The local services, like you mean a Sky, or do you mean like
Yeah,
another SVOD service? Like
Sky, or there's a number of countries I know where broadcasters are starting to think about, hey, let's do an SVOD service. It's no different than if you look at Comcast in the U.S. They've seen what's going on, and they've slowly morphed so that they offer more and more on demand to the customers who are paying $120 a month. So that's competition for those over-the-top players, which is why they got into making their own. Because they couldn't get access to everything as easily as they did in the beginning.
But those will still be, they won't be actually commissioning shows for their SVOD services. They're going to just...
No, but they do it roundabout through sub fees. They pay more sub fees, they'll order more shows, and so it balances out over the long haul.
It's very interesting what's happening. I mean, obviously I live in the UK, so I've got a lot of UK examples. And the UK, as you know, is a very competitive market. We have this new platform from BT, the BT TV platform, which is an IPTV platform. And they just did a deal with Curzon Theaters, where they're actually going to be distributing theatrical release films on the BT platform for, a good hit of money, like an EST type thing. I don't know what it is. I can't remember, but the numbers. But the idea is that it's a new window. It's either simultaneous with theatrical, or maybe just after, or maybe even before. I mean, it's amazing what's going on with these platforms. Is this all good for you? I suppose it's just more windows, more distribution.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think that the part that we have to watch out for is I don't want to, I'm very sensitive to our traditional package media business, and you want to think about that. You don't want to, some of these are a little bit, have potential to cannibalize some of these other rights. And
well, so, DVD sales are falling,
but
right?
I mean, we all know in the U.S. we're flat, down a little bit, but we're, you don't want that to hurry. There's no reason to hurry things. You know what I mean? Long term, we as a studio and an owner of content, it's part of trying to do our part to make sure we maximize all those as you go along. I like the new windows, and there's lots of ways, as I showed, that you can do it without cannibalizing. And I think that's the key. Some of these movies, or the movies that BT's doing, might not have been in theaters. They might have gone to direct-to-video years ago. Now they have a way to get 10 theaters, 15 theaters, et cetera, and get on VOD. So in some ways that's great, because you're taking a movie that wouldn't have been exposed as much and giving it a whole different way to get out there. And I think that's a positive.
Yeah, okay. Let's, is there any questions from the audience for Jim? Because, I mean, this is obviously a rich area. If we could bring the lights up. We have one here. Can we get the mic to Stuart here?
We only have 2 minutes, no mic.
Yeah. Where, Mike, here, front. Where's she going?
She's going up.
Okay, here. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, it's been great. There was some talk yesterday about the fact that the binge viewing Netflix, the changing ways people are watching, is also changing the way the content itself. It can be more deep. It can have more threads to it, more characters. Is that something you're seeing, and how is that being responded to by the people you're selling these shows to? Are they looking for shows with more depth?
Well, I mean, I think if you ask Kevin Beggs, who runs our television production group, each of these platforms has not only their own brand, but their own DNA on how their viewers like to engage with the content. So I think that various shows that he will bring to each of these platforms will take that into consideration. And I think the binge viewing is a factor, and I think that's why you see a lot of carried on storylines as you go. It's changed the way we distribute too, because they never want to have an episode a season out of license. So it's very different for us. I mean, we're used to, we've had to transform a little bit in how we sell, which I like, but it changes things, because they don't want to have season 1 go out of license and all of a sudden somebody's new signs up to the service. Well, I can't watch season 1. I'm not into the show.
Yeah, not good.
Different.
Yeah. And you're right about you say there's no kind of cliffhangers so much. It's much more. It's a much more, holistic approach to the way they do the episodes.
The seasons are a cliffhanger.
Yeah, the seasons are a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
There's a lady up here, yes?
I'm sorry about the question, but can you explain more about the programming of Mad Men on AMC, 7A and 7B? I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Well,
Can you be more specific?
They're going to be,
Thank you.
I don't know exactly how they're going to do it, but I think that there's going to be
There'll be 7 episodes.
There'll be some.
Then there'll be a gap.
I think they've announced it.
Yeah.
It's the
and then there'll be 7 episodes. So there'll be a gap.
Okay, but what do you mean by 7A and 7B?
Well,
I just
A
mean
is
the
first
beginning of
7.
the season and the back of the season. The beginning
So
and the
just
back.
it's just he meant 7 episodes gap, 7 episodes gap.
Okay.
Splitting the season in half.
Okay, thank you.
Which causes some problems when you're trying to sell it,
Okay.
because you're like, you don't have all 14. See what I mean? Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
Regarding privacy, do you ever foresee a time when people take that on in a meaningful way to reduce piracy, peer-to-peer? Will there ever be a way to reduce it?
To reduce piracy. Well, windowing does.
Yeah, I think that, yes, there's going to be ways. I mean, I look at, one of the reasons that our business in China has kind of grown is the government got active, and started to, push around a little bit. And the minute the government gets a little active, things change. Russia is another example of one where the government's starting to, actually wake up to piracy, saying some things and doing some things. And then all of a sudden, Russia's always been one of the top territories for piracy. And I believe with the government getting involved, it'll go down.
It does take a combined effort of regulation and everything.
It does.
Okay, we have to end this. I'm hoping to see Orange is the New Black soon in the UK, so please go out there and sell it to somebody.
It's on Netflix.
Okay, it's on Netflix, good. So I'll have to get a Netflix subscription again.
Exactly.
Jim, that was really interesting. Could you please
Thanks.
join me in thanking Jim Packer? Okay, we're going to go directly into the next one, so if you don't want to be here, leave, but you should want to be here because this is D. Forbes. So D. Forbes is, Dee, do you want to come up here? Yeah, come on up. So our next lightning interview, we're calling these, welcome.
Thank you.
Is Dee Forbes. She's president and managing director of Discovery Networks Western Europe. That means that she is in the big Discovery picture. She's in charge of, I think it's 24 channels, yeah?
That's right.
Channel brands in 22 countries. That's a pretty big remit. Yes, you have to use that.
Yes,
Yeah, okay. Is it working?
it's working.
Oh, good, okay. So I think you're going to start telling us a little bit about kind of how you see the canvas of how you're doing content and how you're thinking about distribution and things like that. So
Yeah.
I'll hand the mic over to you.
Sure, okay. Thanks, Kate. I'll do it a little bit differently than Jim, and I'm going to stand up there in a second and sort of talk you through some examples. It was great to hear Jim say that the old model isn't dead yet.
Yeah.
There's life and hope for us all, I think. And I think it's, what I want to show you is that, TV is well and truly in a very healthy place. And it's in a healthy place for us because we are focusing incredibly strongly on our brands and our consumers and really working with both of those to bring more and better to our audiences. Our model is changing. Discovery, as you know it, is predominantly a pay television organisation. It still is at the heart. But here in Western Europe, we've had to evolve because, pay TV growth has been quite different in many markets. And you take places like Italy, Spain and Germany, pay TV hasn't grown like it has in the UK, for example.
So you have free-to-air networks.
So we have free-to-air networks. And we've been really, I guess, concentrating on working in a free-to-air environment, which is very, very different in those areas. But the great thing that allows us to do that is content. Discovery is one of the biggest providers of content and makers of content in the world, which in this world is hugely beneficial because we have the rights to the majority of our content. So in whatever world we're operating in, we can do that. And I think that is absolutely vital for us. On top of that, we've been very busy acquiring companies as well. Traditionally, we were running our own brands and our own networks, but that has changed. We're looking to build scale in many markets. We acquired Switchover Media last year in Italy, which now makes us the third largest broadcaster in Italy.
And this is free-to-air broadcasting.
Free-to-air broadcaster, absolutely. We also bought a 20% stake in Eurosport, and we bought SBS. So I guess the company is really on a mission to broaden and to get bigger because the world that we are in, you need to be bigger and braver.
You can't call you a pay TV company anymore.
We're not just a pay TV company. We're a hybrid here in Western Europe. It's
You're
unique.
a Prius. The Prius of the TV world.
That's great. Thanks, Kate. I always wanted
Branding.
to be.
It's all about branding.
I always wanted to be a Prius. Okay, so what I want to do is show you a little bit of content because we're at MIP and I think it's all about content. And the first piece, and I'll stay sitting actually.
Oh, you stay sitting, okay.
It's probably
do
fine.
you have to do that or no, are they going to do
No,
that?
I think they will do it.
Oh, they'll do it. Okay, go ahead.
I just want to show you a couple of examples of how we're working in bringing just great content to the consumer because that's what we're all about. And Discovery is known for lots of things, but one thing we've been doing a lot more of lately are global live events. And a global live event is precarious. It's maybe prime time in the US, it's 3 a.m. in Europe, it's middle of the night in Asia. But I think what we've seen this year is a real, I guess some real breakthroughs in this area. And the first one I want to show you a clip on is something called Nick Walinda Live. It was Nick Walinda's incredible journey walking the tight wire across the Grand Canyon. Every time I talk about it, I still shiver because I was up at 3 a.m. watching it, and I've never seen television quite like it. But it wasn't just a TV experiment. It went crazy on Twitter. It went crazy on digital, and I guess it really was a multimedia experiment and opportunity. Basically, Nick was prepared to die. His father died walking the tightrope, and that's in his blood.
God.
Now, of course,
I'm glad he didn't.
So am I. But I think it just showed great television, and we had 1.3 million tweets on that show. It peaked at 40,000, which was pretty incredible. And again, I think the way that we worked around the world on this again just showed the scale of how content can travel.
Because you showed it simultaneously live.
Absolutely,
everywhere.
yeah, all around.
Interesting. And that was one of your first live events.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you'll do more, I assume.
Yeah, I guess the other one we did that got a lot of coverage this year was the Oprah Winfrey Lance Armstrong interview, and that went out live in most markets, not all. But I think as these things come up, we will do more, and it's got to be the right event, obviously, and make it engaging for the viewer. Staying with, I guess, this idea of content, and we've seen great growth in our channels this year. Discovery is up over 10% in the region. TLC is growing about 30+%. So we really are driving, big audiences in these markets in the West where, we are very dependent on advertising revenue and on affiliate revenue. And it's very important that the content therefore cuts through on many, many angles. We're very fortunate at Discovery. We've got a great pipeline of content from the US, but we also have a fantastic team now in London, led by Louis Silverwasser and Julian Bellamy, to create international content based out of London. And those guys have been very, very busy just getting another pipeline of content. And I think it really is a great testament to them that we are getting some great traction in that team. And I think what it's also opened up is the fact that sometimes an idea that was perhaps a local idea can now become international. And the next clip I'll show you is one of those. It's a show that we produced this year. We aired it. It's called Naked and Marooned, with a crazy British guy called Ed Stafford, who had this crazy dream that he wanted to be abandoned on an island with no food and no clothes, and that was the case. But we filmed it. Yeah, right. It's a series. It did phenomenally well for us. But again, it just shows the human spirit, and it shows just how someone like Ed can just then engage with the audiences. The numbers were phenomenal. But it began as an idea for a UK-only show, and it showed around the world.
I love the fact that he's naked and maroon, but he has, technology, a Twitter feed, a camera. So he's all wired up for sound, but he doesn't have, a tool or.
He's a really accomplished cameraman.
He
was the guy that he decided one day to leave home, and he walked the Amazon for 2 years, but he took a camera with him, and that's why I think the show is so great, because it truly is him filming himself and what he goes through. Super show, and just got audiences so excited all around the world.
So you've showed it on the Discovery Channel.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And the
not,
idea,
not time and date. I mean, or did you?
That varied around the world actually. And I think we have shorter windows within Europe probably, and we're getting closer to US as well. Sometimes if a premiere happens in the US, we will get closer, but it's not like the movie business. We don't have to be day and date, except when it's live, of course.
Right. How about US? Did they take this?
They did, yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
Did it
They
work?
liked it, yeah, absolutely. I think Ed was very popular, and I think he's the essence of Discovery. It's all about survival and that great human spirit.
Cool.
I guess, in Western Europe, we've got some very, very big markets. And, I mentioned earlier that it's important that we keep our advertisers and our affiliates very happy. And we have a local approach to our affiliates and our advertisers. In fact, just last week in the Netherlands, we announced a setting up of a joint venture ad sales house with Viacom in the Netherlands. The first of its kind for us. And I think it again shows our local approach to business, if you like. And that was very much a unique solution to that for that market. And again, with advertisers, having local shows really makes a difference. Our Italian networks are free to air. They have huge numbers. And we launched a channel called D-Max a number of years, well, in fact, a year and a half ago in Italy, to great success. And it's getting men back into television in Italy, which is always great to hear.
Now, is that free to air or pay?
It's a free to air.
That's
it's free to air, yeah. But again, advertisers want that more and more local touch points with content. So we create a lot of local shows in Italy that are purely for that market. And the next clip I'll show you is another one of that, but it's a show purely for the Italian audience. It's a local guy. He's Chef Rubio. He's an ex-rugby player, but he has a passion for street food. And he's a great, great character, and he's fantastic to work with advertisers and with clients. The show is called Unti e Bisonti, which sounds lovely in Italian. It means oily and greasy in English. Doesn't sound
Oily
half
and greasy.
oily and greasy.
Unti e Bisonti.
Unti e Bisonti.
Okay.
But again, what it just shows is having the local flavour can really engage A, audiences, but B, advertisers, which is obviously very important to us.
So he's actually a known rugby guy, obviously.
But a small time
Small
rugby.
time,
It's
okay.
Italy after all. Come
Right,
on.
yeah.
Yeah, he was a local player.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that his rugby roots, get him that great male appeal.
So this won't travel, but it did really well for you in the market because, as you said, local
Correct.
sponsorship.
Yeah.
I mean, I noticed that, like the Wallander you had, it was an AOL Presents thing. I'm not sure what you did with Naked and Marooned. Was there a sponsor around that? And then this obviously had Peroni and things like that. So you're also building this commercial stuff in, I guess.
Yeah, totally. It's, I guess, when you build a show from the ground up, it's much easier to get advertisers involved, or even post-show. Again, really, a lot of the Peroni work there you saw on with Chef Rubio was post-production because they want to see the show first.
Right.
Whereas I guess now with AFP, or advertiser-funded programming, people are getting involved at the outset. But that was a very local production that when Peroni just saw the show and saw him, they loved him, and then it became a tour around the nation with him, cooking, talking about his show, etc. And we're doing a lot more with him actually. So I think we have high hopes for him.
Very interesting. How do you deal with, we were just heard from Jim and he was talking about VOD and he was saying networks are getting much more into VOD and they're realizing they have to do this because the Netflix might come in and do something to them that they don't want to lose that business. So as a broadcaster and a pay TV operator, how do you see VOD and SVOD and services like Netflix?
Well, I think VOD is a fact of life now. It's I think we have around 30 operators in Western Europe were taking VOD from us. And I think our approach is very simple. We work with the operators, and as operators want to get into the space, we work with them. And our content does well in that space, and we're happy to do that. So I think it's market by market, operator by operator. There's no one size fits all, but there is no doubt that VOD, catch-up, SVOD is here to stay, and it's up to us as broadcasters and content providers to figure out the best model with our partners, and that's how we're approaching it.
So if there wasn't a good VOD alternative in the market, would you launch your own SVOD service? I mean,
Again,
Sky has their own SVOD service.
Yeah.
It's called Now TV.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's case by case. To launch our own, it's a very big investment. But could it happen? Yes, possibly. I think we have enough content to do that. But I think we've got to start with the operator first and foremost, and work with them as our partners to get the best solution for them, and then we can provide that.
Okay. I didn't keep much time for questions, but is there a question for Dee from the audience? I've sort of hogged the time here. Can we turn the lights up? Is there any questions for Dee about what she's doing? Lots of interesting stuff, cool programming, localized, global, online. Is there a question? Is she running up to somebody? Yes. Who are you?
Yes, we've heard about how you use a digital space for distribution strategy, but I was wondering, how do you use it in terms of determining how to develop content, what kinds of content to develop and distribute, as well as how do you use that kind of technology and that kind of platform for feedback mechanisms to determine how you move forward?
Okay.
For new content.
Sorry, I missed the start of the question.
He wants to know how you use the new technology to figure out what to commission or what to produce.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the new platforms, the new way of doing things. I mean, how do you do that?
I guess there's a number of things there. One way is talent sourcing. We are finding talent on places like YouTube right now.
Yeah, that's right.
In fact, we just signed a deal with Pixie Woo, who are here, in fact, at MIP last year, to do a show for us. They had a show on YouTube, and we've just signed them for a show for TLC.
This is the makeup girls. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
The makeup, yeah.
The same with...
They have a huge YouTube following.
Phenomenal.
So they're going to do a show on Discovery.
On TLC.
On TLC, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Likewise, in Italy, we found something similar. We were trawling for just great talent, and there was a lady on YouTube, Cleo, who did tutorials on how to just do your makeup. Phenomenal success. We took her across, and she's one of the biggest shows ever on real time in Italy. So I think we're really seeing it as a place for great talent scouting, because it's about just putting yourself out there and seeing what you get. So I think we're definitely using YouTube, etc., for talent scouting. I think on the other side, I think what's been incredible from Facebook and Twitter is just an immediate reaction to shows. You don't have to wait for your overnights anymore. You're told there and then.
You get a feeling
You get a
for
feel,
what's going on.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've done experiments, particularly in the UK, where we will get, we had shows with James Cracknell a number of years ago where James was on Twitter and he was on Facebook Live while the show was going out. You had that constant interaction with him and an immediate return, and we learned an awful lot in doing that. So I think we're still in the learning phase, but I think all of these tools are giving us just so much more data and so much more information very, very quickly that we're then using and taking forward. So they're vital in terms of development.
Yeah, you'll probably be very happy to have the Nielsen Twitter TV ratings launch in the UK
Absolutely.
and beyond. Yes, the lady who
I
talked
think it's
this
really
morning.
interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic because you see the whole two hand in hand, and sometimes you look at the trending on Twitter for some shows. You think, why haven't we got higher ratings? So we're very interested in sort of looking at how that develops.
Yeah. Listen, Dee, that was fascinating. We're going to have to draw this to a close now because I've got to go to the next interview. But I think this was fascinating to see what you're doing and see how you're developing the content. So could you please join me in thanking Dee Forbes? Thank you. Okay. Now we have our third lightning interview. Evan, you want to come up and join me? This is Evan Shapiro. He is with Participant Media. He's president of a new network called Pivot. He's going to tell you more about Pivot, so I'm not going to tell you about Pivot because he's going to tell you about Pivot. But Evan's done a lot of interesting things. This is a very interesting concept in terms of a new network launch in the U.S. It's not international yet, is it? No.
Not yet, no.
Okay. So we'll ask him about what the plans are for that. But I think to begin with, Evan, you should just kind of give us a view of what Pivot's all about, why you launched a new network now. It's a linear channel, yeah? And how you think it fits into this sort of landscape that we've been discussing all morning about, how things are changing.
Sure. So Participant Media, we were born out of Participant Media, which is a studio that was founded about 10 years ago by Jeff Skoll, who made a tremendous amount of money working. He was the first president of eBay.
That's right.
And he took his money and decided to make the world a better place.
Right.
And he founded Participant as a film studio dedicated to the idea that a story well told can change the world. And while we don't have naked people walking across the Grand Canyon, although that's a good.
We should tell you about that.
Belinda walking across the Grand Canyon would be a huge hit. Sorry.
That might work in
I
Pivot.
lost my train of thought there for a second thinking about that. But we can all just visualize it for a second. Okay. No, the idea is that films like An Inconvenient Truth, Food Inc., Waiting for Superman, Good Night and Good Luck, Syriana, The Help, Lincoln, Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, they help create change by drawing a viewer in and making them think about the world differently.
Yeah.
Jeff decided to dedicate a good piece of his capital to making a television network that does the same thing. And I teach a class on television at NYU, and one of the great things about having that open forum of students there is I was able to kind of unearth two really big misconceptions or misperceptions about this generation of millennials. One, that they don't care about anything but themselves, which is the opposite of the truth. So we decided to dedicate the channel to what I call the new greatest generation. Generation that's been handed a shit stick of a world by the generations that came before them and are now being asked to step up and save the world from itself. And the second misperception is that they don't watch television. They actually watch more television than almost any other generation. They just often are doing it on devices, as your guest earlier talked about, that are not necessarily being measured properly.
Right.
So we built a channel called Pivot dedicated to this new greatest generation and dedicated to creating a destination for TV for a generation that is not necessarily treated with a whole lot of respect when it comes to their television. We launched the channel on August 1st.
I'm not sure that MTV would agree with you. MTV thinks they respect.
I think you should tune in a little bit. But
MTV's lost the plot in your mind.
I think that they have.
Yeah.
I think that that there are times where MTV does respect their audience, and there are times that they don't. And what's interesting is we launched 32 years to the day of MTV.
Really?
And we are dedicated to, I think, recapturing that youthful spirit on television. But we do it in a way with a range of programming from scripted to unscripted, from comedy to drama, that I don't think is really represented on television in too many places. So I'm actually going to play a clip really quick that gives you a sample. And what you'll see is, does anybody here know what the first piece of content that ever aired on MTV, the original MTV, was? Video Killed the Radio Star. That's it. By which band? Anybody? Nice. So what you'll see here is our remake of that, which was the first piece of content that launched the network, and then you'll see a whole bunch of our shows, which I'll talk about on the other side. You can roll the clip.
We're not too different. Maybe our generation will really change things.
Speaking of pivot,
The Huffington Post says this could be one of the most successful and talked about network launches in years.
that's awesome.
Pivot is aiming for nothing less than to change the TV business.
The tables have turned in America.
Almost everything on the network will be connected to some sort of social advocacy.
We wanted to do something that would hopefully make a difference.
If somebody wants to join you, how do they get involved?
Hi, I'm Josh Thomas. Watch me on my show. Please like me. The show is really super vaguely based on my life.
I can never really trust what someone that good looking is into me. Do you know what I mean? I just don't get it. I'm just like, oh, what are you hiding?
Everything is different now. Information isn't top down, it's a shared experience.
I think information is out there, it just depends on where you're trying to find it.
We are flipping the whole concept of what news is.
If there was a show that did that, it would probably be my favorite show.
Do something with your news. Take part live.
It's not like you have to do the project by yourself. I will walk with you. I will give you my all. That's why I'm here.
I want to be a doctor because a doctor is like a hero.
I'm in the ring 24/7 fighting for my clients. Losing is not an option. Can you hear me?
This ain't your daddy's talk show.
Oh, the modern world of dating. Is he jerking her around?
Completely.
What do you do when your values clash with the people that you love?
Are we recording?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are making a TV show. It's going to be a half-hour variety show. I'm going to be the host. We're going to have short films, live performances, music, animation, conversations, and more.
I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks again.
I believe in truth, freedom, above all things, love.
Souls escaping through this hole that is gaping. This world is mine for the taking.
The world ends when you're dead. Until then.
And this is the beginning of a whole new chapter.
So what you see is a range of...
Very interesting.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
And so what we want to try to do is all your guests have talked about this. There's not a binary way that television is going to be consumed or made or appreciated on a moving forward basis. So we have created what we think the network itself and the way we're creating the content and the way it's meant to be consumed is pluralistic. No two people will watch two different shows the same way, but you won't watch the same show twice the same way during the course of a series. You'll time shift it, you'll watch it live. And so we also launched an app. And it's an app that allows our audience to watch our channel live and on demand on any device, anywhere they go. It's called the Pivot app. And we're the first network, at least in America, that allows that to be sold direct to the consumer by the broadband provider. So for a small fee on top of a broadband fee every month, you can get the app and enjoy the content on any device, anywhere you want to go.
So Verizon sells the app.
That's the idea, yes. Verizon.
But you also are trying to get cable carriage, right?
Both.
What are you, 60 million homes?
43 million homes.
43
Thank you for
sorry.
the generous.
43 million, sorry.
But 43 million homes in the United States.
And those are cable homes?
It's wired and satellite.
Wired and satellite.
So, and the idea is to cater to 100% of the television audience.
Aren't you finding that's hard to get those at the same time that you're saying, by the way, we're selling an over-the-top app, or we're selling
But we're
an
not selling it
IPTV
over the
app?
top. We're allowing the MVPD, the cable provider, to sell it for us. So it is not. We are not retailers. We are wholesalers.
Got it.
So we're allowing. So Verizon, Comcast, Time Warner, they all have, and every pay TV provider here or pay ISP provider here in Europe, they have customers who are, people call them cord cutters, which is Orwellianly inaccurate. They have cords. Every person under 30 has a cord. It's called a broadband cord. They have some kind of connection out there tethered to the internet. And we want to be able to provide content direct to each one of those consumers, and we don't want to have to force them to pirate it in order to get it.
Right.
Game of Thrones is the most pirated piece of content around the world. More people watch it on BitTorrent than watch it.
Yep.
And so we want to be able to cater to all those. But each one of these shows is also an interesting construct as well. So Hit Record, which is Joseph Gordon-Levitt's show, is basically a modern version of the Tracy Ullman Show or the Cal Burnett Show or the Muppet Show, where Joe is Kermit.
Yeah, the Muppet. I was going to say it's the Muppet. I might not like that.
And he's constructed it with this online community called Recorders. He is the benign dictator of this show. He's the creative genius behind the show, but he puts out calls to his recording community for jokes, for shorts, for animation. And then he constructs the show in an open source way. It's the first true open source. It's not user generated. It's an open source variety show.
And he picks these recorders, or how do they pick
he has a community. He's been building this site for 4 years now, and he has 200,000 community members from around the world. And so one person will write a lyric, and then somebody else will write music, and then he challenges everybody to sing it and to perform it together. And he puts it together as if he's the Lorne Michaels of his open source community.
See, that sounds like a great show that would play internationally.
It is. Well, that's why I'm here.
So you're selling these shows internationally?
These are all for sale.
Okay.
You can stop by the Tricon booth. I have no idea where it is, but you can stop by it. And
but you're not trying to launch a channel internationally yet?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So you're just
I mean,
selling
it's
the
something
shows.
that we'd like to try to explore long term. I think that as you know, it's very difficult when you have an incumbent like Discovery who's been in the market for many years, 30, 40 years, making television, infiltrating the linear television market around the world right now it's a very interesting prospect. So right now we're selling the shows individually. We'd love to talk about blocks and things like that. So
talk about some of the other shows.
That's an interesting construct. Jersey Strong we think reality shows for the most part are sometimes exploitative.
I like the play on Jersey Shore.
Yes, and I think if you want to talk about the difference between MTV and Pivot, look at Jersey Shore and Jersey Strong. So we have a reality show called Jersey Strong, which is about two very unusual families in Newark, and the San Francisco Chronicle called it a reality show for people who hate reality shows. So it's a beautifully made documentary series poured into the format of a reality show. And so we don't exploit. This may shock you, but a lot of reality shows are actually scripted. I know, it's shocking, right? But
I think this audience knows that.
We shot it like a documentary, and then poured it into a reality format that our audience of millennials is really used to. Raising McCain, which is Meghan McCain's show, very interesting docu-follow talk hybrid for and by a millennial who represents really this generation in a nutshell. She has a very, very conservative background in politics. She has many different conservative views, but she's also very progressive when it comes to certain social issues as well. And then Please Like Me, which is a very interesting show. It was brought to us as a remake from ABC 2 in Australia, and they pitched it to us. They wanted us to remake the show for the United States, and then we watched it and fell in love with it, and we decided that our audience could handle accents. I know, strange.
Wow.
And so we decided not to ruin this perfect snowflake, but to actually let the show perform in the United States as it was originally created. And we're now co-producing season 2.
So that's what we saw.
With ABC.
Was that season 2?
That's actually season 1.
Oh, that was season 1.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is for sale around the world now, and we'll be making 10 episodes.
And you're co-producing season 2 with
ABC.
ABC.
Yeah.
Okay. But it will show up on ABC or on Pivot or both?
Both.
Both at the same time, simultaneously.
Simultaneously, yeah. So we're really trying to upend the TV business. We think the traditional model is very, very, very strong, but we also know that there's this untraditional model that's also very, very strong, and we are really trying to bridge the gap between the two and serve the audience in every way that they want to be served, to embrace the plurality of television as it's coming in the new generation and not run away or to only one future.
And do you actually encourage your audience to, be involved socially and on second screen apps? Are you getting into all that stuff?
First of all, I don't believe in second screen apps. I think that there's a primary screen and then there's Twitter and Facebook.
Okay.
And so I think the second screen is Twitter. I don't think our app is meant to be a primary screen. You can take part. You can take action. So Please Like Me is a comedy about suicide and coming out. I know, very funny. But there are moments in the show where we encourage the audience to take part, and on the app, a pop-up screen from our website, takepart.com, will pop up and enable you to take part. But we don't believe, we're not embracing a second screen mentality. We see a primary screen, and then we see social media as the second screen. But Hit Record is a show that is, the audience is not just taking part, they're actually helping make the show itself.
Right.
And Take Part Live, which is another show that you saw there, it's live every night because we do think millennials will watch a lot of live television if there's a reason to. If they have something called FOMO. Does anybody know what FOMO is?
Fear of missing out.
This guy is right on it all day.
Fear of missing out. Yeah.
Fear of missing out. So we actually stoke the FOMO, and we think that
Stoke the FOMO.
that is part of what makes an audience watch live. You talked about Breaking Bad earlier. You know, millennials are the most binge watching generation out there. But what they say is 3/4 of them say they binge watch in order to catch up, to catch the next season live.
Okay.
Which is why Breaking Bad did 10.5 million people live on its last
And
episode.
some of those were millennials, is what you're saying.
I would say about a third is
Yeah.
if
See,
I
that,
read my
I think
data
that's really,
correctly.
I think that's a really interesting point. This whole idea that we are sort of misconstruing what millennials want and what they think. And I think this sort of idea that they don't watch TV and all that kind of stuff. I think you're absolutely right. They're just consuming it differently. And as you say, they still like sometimes shared viewing experiences.
They love it.
So,
My daughter sent me a picture of 40 kids crammed into a room in her dorm. You're supposed to, at that point, say you don't look old enough to have a child in college.
right. Sorry,
Thank
you don't
you.
look old enough to have a
Thank
child.
you very much. That's very kind. And she said every dorm, every floor. That's the way it was. And so
Really?
we
Wow.
want to play into that mentality. We want to offer programming. Please Like Me, though. On the other hand, we put the first episode up live online, and then we stacked the show on the network in a binge watching marathon every day for a month.
So you stripped it. You stripped it every day.
We stripped it across, and then we stacked it as a binge watch.
Really?
We run Friday Night Lights on the network. We stack it as a binge watch, and you can see as the night goes on, you can see the hashtags going crazy for the show.
Isn't that interesting?
Landry.
What?
Landry.
Oh,
Anyone?
Landry. Right.
Okay.
Well, sorry. You got a lunch here, see. So, any questions for Evan? Yeah, there's one. Lights up, please. You have one here in the front. Is there another one somewhere that I can get a mic to? Anybody else?
Hello, thank you. Fascinating stuff.
One over there.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
What are your thoughts as millennials grow older? Will they stay with Pivot, or will you have another network with a similar ethos that they'll move to? How do you see that, the future going?
It's a great question.
When the millennials grow up, will they leave?
If they grow up.
If they grow up.
I never grew up, so I think some will and I think some won't. I think we like to say we're not a lifestyle brand. We like to say we're a life stage brand. So what we want to try to do is build a flycatcher for this generation as they age in and age out. But we also have great ambitions too. You know, we talk about potentially launching another network and doing what MTV and VH1 were originally intended to do. I don't know if they do that now.
That's interesting. A flycatcher for this generation.
Yeah.
Love that. That's a good. Somebody should tweet that. There's another question.
I was
here.
raised in
Yep.
soundbite.
What? Yep.
How big is your team in New York? Do you have an acquisition staff for those people that are producing content?
Yeah, at the acquisition staff, so we are split. Ad sales, affiliate sales, and researcher in New York, so that's about 20 people. And then everybody else is in LA. So our acquisitions team, Jenny Morris, who was due to be here, but she actually got a little sick. So Jenny Morris is our head of acquisitions. Some of you might know her. She was last at the Sundance Channel International. Now I stole her and moved her to Los Angeles. So she's in LA.
Are you buying a lot of stuff?
We are buying a lot of stuff.
Because the stuff that you showed is mostly
this is the stuff that's for sale here
Right.
at the market. But we acquired Friday Night Lights. We're running a great show called Little Mosque on the Prairie, which a lot of you probably run. We have Farscape on, first time to have it on HD. We have a ton of film. So yeah, we are acquiring content, film and series.
Okay. Anything else? One last question. No. Pretty cool network though, huh? Like that? I thought it was pretty cool.
Thank you.
I want to go see Will too. That sounds like an interesting
Yeah,
show.
we're actually
Cool.
that's a co-production with Channel 4, so we're starting that.
Oh, great. So we might see that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, good.
That we're doing pre-sales here, and we'll also at the Tricon booth. And
okay.
so, but you can that'll be going to production early next year.
It looks good. It looks like a sort of, I don't know,
It's
Shakespeare
Shakespeare
meets-
in Love meets Deadwood meets 8 Mile.
Great. Okay. Well, I think we should end on that. Could you please join me in thanking Evan Shapiro? Thank you, Evan. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.